In a previous class, we have discussed metabolism of basic amino acid, that is lysine and arginine. Now, we are going to discuss about nitric oxide, that is an important derivative of arginine. So, nitric oxide, it is a potentially active molecule. You can see nitric oxide, there is a superscript dot that is suggestive of unpaired electron in its structure. And because of having this unpaired electron, nitric oxide becomes highly reactive free radical. You can see this is unpaired electron in nitric oxide. The biological half-life of nitric oxide is very short, is about 0.1 second. Previously, this nitric oxide was known as EDRF, that is endothelial derived relaxing factor, and it was required for arterial dilatation. Now, how this nitric oxide is synthesized? As we know, it is synthesized from arginine, basic amino acid, by enzyme, that is nitric oxide synthase. So this is arginine acted upon by nitric oxide synthase in the presence of FAD, FMN and tetrahydrobiopterin. Along with that, it requires NADPH. So the arginine gets converted into citrulline plus nitric oxide. So this is the reaction by which, with the help of NOS, that is nitric oxide synthase enzyme, synthesize nitric oxide from the arginine. And here you can see this nitric oxide act through secondary messenger, that is cyclic GMP. Now we'll see the effects of this nitric oxide. As we have seen, it is a very short half-life of 0.1 second. It reacts with the oxygen, forms nitrites, that is excreted in urine. That is reacts with the hemoglobin, forms nitrates that are that metabolite excreted in the urine. Very low quantity of nitric oxide is expelled through lung by exhalation. On exposure to superoxide anion, the nitric oxide is converted to peroxynitrite, which is highly reactive free radical, and it causes lipid peroxidation and resulting from cell injury and cell death. There are different isoenzyme forms of nitric oxide synthase enzyme, and they form nitric oxide at different sites. There are different three nitric oxide synthase enzymes. One is neuronal nitric oxide synthase, that is NOS1. Second is macrophage nitric oxide synthase, that is NOS2. And third one is endothelial nitric oxide synthase, that is NOS3. This neuronal nitric oxide synthase seen in the central and peripheral neurons, and that is mainly cytoplasmic enzyme. This enzyme is activated by calcium gene present for this enzyme is on chromosome number 12. While this macrophage nitric oxide synthase, that is mainly seen in the macrophages and neutrophils, as well as in the hepatocyte. This is important because it is induced by cytokines during inflammation. So this is inducible nitric oxide synthase enzyme, and that level increases during the inflammation. It is not activated by calcium, and gene for this nitric oxide synthase is present chromosome number 17. Then comes the endothelial nitric oxide synthase, that is mainly seen in the endothelial cells, platelets, endocardium and myocardium. That is constantly produced in the plasma membrane, so it's a constitutional nitric oxide synthase that is also activated by the calcium, and gene for this enzyme is present on the chromosome number 7. Now you see how this nitric oxide acts. So we'll go through the mechanism of action. Once this nitric oxide is synthesized, we have seen that it acts by the secondary messenger. Here, in case of nitric oxide, the secondary messenger is cyclic GMP. This nitric oxide activates the guanylyl cyclase enzyme that converts GTP to cyclic GMP. This cyclic GMP activates the phosphatase enzyme and removes phosphate from the myosin light chain phosphatase, and it forms a myosin light chain. So this resulting in contraction, and by removing this phosphate group, it leads to relaxation. So the main action of nitric oxide is relaxation. So, and the action of nitric oxide is through cyclic GMP, while this phosphodiesterase enzyme converts the cyclic GMP to GMP and inhibit the activity of nitric oxide. So this nitric oxide mainly acts through the cyclic GMP and it causes mostly relaxation, and by that it causes vasodilatation. Functions of nitric oxide. First one, as I told you, it's a potent vasodilator. It regulates the normal blood pressure. Along with that, it also inhibits platelet aggregation and adhesion. It acts as a neurotransmitter, and it is postulated that nitric oxide associated with the memory also. It stimulates the release of certain hormones like release of GHRH and LHRH from the hypothalamus that is stimulated by nitric oxide. Bactericidal action in the macrophages. As we have seen that nitric oxide reacts with the superoxide free radical and produces the peroxynitrite. The peroxynitrite that synthesized in the macrophages is highly toxic and it causes potential damage to the bacteria and leads to bactericidal activity. The next function is smooth muscle relaxation. Nitric oxide is a non-adrenergic and non-cholinergic neurotransmitter, and it decreases the GI motility and causes relaxation of the sphincters. Now we'll go through various therapeutic uses of nitric oxide. Based on the mechanism and the functions it carried out, we use nitric oxide for treatment purpose in certain conditions. We'll see. First one is in angina pectoris. It is a cardiac condition when there is a vasoconstriction of coronary arteries. It leads to chest pain. In that condition, nitroglycerin or the nitroprusside tablet that is used as a source of nitric oxide, and that will dilate the coronary artery and help in removing the spasm, and that relieves the pain of angina pectoris. Second, pulmonary hypertension. Inhalational form of nitric oxide produces the pulmonary vasodilatation, produces local vasodilatation without affecting the systemic blood pressure. So this is used in case of pulmonary hypertension. In importance, this nitric oxide relaxes the smooth muscles in corpus cavernosum and increases the blood flow in the penis. It causes erection. Based on that, the sildenafil drug is used. This inhibits the degradation of cyclic GMP by the phosphodiesterase and potentiate or the prolong the effect of nitric oxide. So it is used as a drug in treating erectile dysfunction. And lastly, it is used in the septicemic shock. So thank you. This is all about nitric oxide synthesized from the arginine. With the help of nitric oxide synthase enzyme, there are various forms of nitric oxide synthase enzyme. We have seen the mechanism of action of nitric oxide, biological functions of nitric oxide, and therapeutic uses of nitric oxide. So thank you. This is all about nitric oxide.